Howdy, howdy, howdy. Hey, I'm really glad everyone made it out. If you just wandered in the door because there was pizza, you're at the House Hack Seattle and Origin Point happy hour for house hackers and investors. I hope either you are one of those things or you want to be one of those things and have met some people that can help you along that journey. My name is Michael. I'm the principal agent at House Hack Seattle. We're doing what we always do every month. We've got a bunch of really cool people in the house. I hope you guys had some chance to eat, to drink, to meet some friends and future friends. And like always, we're going to put a little bit of content in your ear as well. So hopefully you can walk away not just with some new friendships and relationships, but also with a couple of key takeaways that can help you towards financial independence, that can help you towards progressing as an investor or taking the very first step as an investor. Today, we're going to talk about something that has been in the news frequently, which is the hot Seattle housing market and how to actually make something happen as a home buyer in the hot Seattle housing market. It is something that has just been a part of life for so many people during COVID and then disappeared briefly after COVID and then, for better or worse, has come back here in 2024 with a bunch of fun little twists like high interest rates and other things that we're not super accustomed to. So everyone's rolling with the punches. These conversations about how to win in a competitive situation are super important. So today I've got Kara Rosansky at Origin Point up with me. We do not have a slideshow. We're not going to bore you. We're just going to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the market, what we're seeing working in the market, strategies that we've used over the last however many years we've both been in business to get offers accepted in a very difficult market, and hopefully give you a couple of key takeaways that you can walk away with. No pressure, but I'll also open the mic up to questions here at the end. So if you have either situations you've run into or if you have questions about what we're covering here, we're happy to give our 2 cents. Me and Kara have both been doing this for quite some time and have been through a couple of different market cycles. So hopefully some of our personal experience and stories can be helpful there. So before we get started, Kara at Origin Point is one of the sponsors for this event, so definitely feel free to talk to her about loan pre-approvals, anything like that. Before, during, after the conversation, we also have David Weiser in the house somewhere. Whoop. David Weiser in the house. David Weiser is a builder, but not just any builder. He's a builder of backyard cottages, DADUs. So I know that's a very, very hot topic in Seattle, and one of the most hot type of homes right now are single-family homes that have the potential for a DADU in the future. So if you have questions about what happens once you actually get your dream project under contract and get ready to start building, David Weiser is the guy. We are just finishing up a 1,200 square foot DADU in Wallingford that David and I are building together. We're planning on having an open house sometime in the next month or so, where all y'all can stop by, see David's amazing workmanship, ask us questions about the project. Because I trust David, I've actually only visited the project once the entire time that it's been under construction, so I'll defer most of the questions about the actual project to David, although I'll be happy to answer questions about acquisition, numbers, strategies, all that kind of thing. So stay tuned. If you're in the meetup group, you will get an email once we push that event out, and we'd love to see you all there. Maybe we'll get the same pizza. Yeah, so without further ado, let's welcome Kara.
Hi everyone, I'm Kara with Origin Point. I have been in the lending business since 2009, so I've seen a couple different cycles. Michael and I have worked together, 5 years now?
5 years.
Maybe, and we always are working together on investment-focused financing and purchases and so forth. I'll let you start.
Yeah.
So just to kind of create a little bit of a roadmap here. When we talk about competitive situations, we're talking about the situation that we've been in Seattle for quite some time, where there are both fewer houses than there are people that want to buy them being built and being sold by existing homeowners, right? So that situation creates a supply and demand imbalance where sellers have quite a bit of power and buyers have quite a bit less power. So some of the most important things that go into a competitive offer situation are going to be what the seller is looking for, right? As a buyer, you obviously have needs, wants out of this offer situation, but unfortunately, if there's 12 buyers and there's one seller, we need to focus a little bit more on what the seller needs and less about what you as a buyer need, because if you don't hit the seller's needs, they're just going to say, no, thank you, next. and you won't get that offer accepted. So big picture here, there's really 3 primary levers that as a buyer you can pull to try and get the seller to accept your offer. Those 3 are going to be cash, right? How much money are you willing to put down? How much money are you willing to overall purchase the home for? That tends to be the one that everyone thinks about right away. And it also tends to be the one that inexperienced agents and inexperienced lenders latch onto, right? If you want to get your offer accepted, you just need to pay more, right? There are 2 other strategies, though, that can get offers accepted and oftentimes result in us getting offers accepted at lower purchase prices than some of the competing offers. Those are going to be contingencies, right? So that's anything, in the offer around due diligence, like inspections, loan contingencies like financing or appraisal, which obviously for the most part benefit the buyer and for the most part don't benefit the seller. And then finally, just competency, right? Real estate, like any business, is one where there's a vast difference in the level of skill in a lot of the people in this industry. And obviously people that are top performers want to work with other top performers. And also mistakes, in the offer process could result in your offer being invalid or just not accepted. So we'll kind of talk about each of those a little bit, and then we'll open it up for some questions.
So one thing to add too, and this wasn't common, say 2-3 months ago, but now more than ever, you have to be prepared. If you are actively looking for a house, do not wait to get pre-approved. So even if you're like, oh, I might be dabbling or I might be looking, start with a pre-approval. We do a soft pull credit. It's no harm to your credit score. Get your numbers in line, figure out what you can qualify for, figure out if there's any hiccups, because the second you find the house you want, you're gonna have to jump and it's gonna be quick. And so being prepared is the first step. Also, one thing to mention is because things are going over and asking price, you have to be prepared for a backup plan. Like what happens if you waive your financing and the appraisal doesn't come in at value? That's where cash comes in. You need to be able to say, well, I can afford to pay up to $20,000, if it doesn't appraise. Michael also mentioned down payment and how much cash you're willing to bring to the table. I've had VA clients with 0% down get approved in this market. I have one under contract right now. So it can look important to the seller, but if your agent and your lender are communicating with the listing agent, the reason behind why this buyer is strong and doing something a certain way, they can get past some things that in the past maybe look less promising. The biggest thing too is having a team that's there to communicate on the listing side. The number of touches, it's proven, the number of touches the buying side has with the listing side, the more likely that offer is to get accepted. And that falls under the competency piece of things. So.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The market, even though it is very hot, it has always been choppy in Seattle. The reality is that when houses only sit on the market for 4 days, even though real estate is a 24/7 business, and even though there are thousands of investors in Seattle, just look at the roster for like Bigger Pockets or any of these big like investor conferences. Everyone's from Seattle. For some reason, like every real estate investor has to have lived in Seattle at some point in their life. Even with all that competition, there are still houses like every quarter that I see go under contract and go pending, and I go, oh wow, like they just snuck in, right? That price doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you want to be one of the people that gets one of those houses under contract, you need to be ready to move quickly. And that means having your financing all pre kind of put together. It also means having the agent relationships where like when those unicorns come up, they're sent to you quickly so you can act on them. And then also just having the decisiveness, right, to know what you're looking at and be able to pull the trigger quickly, because if it is really an amazing deal, it won't be around for very long. So Kara's kind of talked a little bit about each of these overviews. I think cash is one that is the most clear to everyone. So we can definitely take more questions on the cash side. For the most part, just make more money and have more money is not actionable advice for a lot of people. So we won't spend too much time on that. But let's talk about contingencies a little bit. So if you've been around real estate a little bit, you may know that contingencies are just anything in the contract that would allow you to essentially do additional due diligence and connected to that, probably walk away from the sale if anything from that due diligence was not satisfactory, right? So the big three that we typically see in real estate are inspections or feasibility contingencies, which is essentially your time as a buyer to look into the home or look into the development opportunity and make sure that it's what you're looking for and make sure that the quality and the repairs that are needed are within the scope that you were planning on. Something that a lot of people don't know about inspections and feasibility contingencies is that it is totally up to you as the buyer to be subjectively satisfied with the results. So it doesn't matter that the seller has loved their home for a decade and has repaired every little leak in the home and it's perfect and pristine. If there's an inspection contingency, you can change your mind for any reason at all. You don't even actually need to do a home inspection. You can just walk away. So the sellers are terrified of these contingencies because they could quickly turn the tables where they go from a situation where there's 15 offers on the table and they pick you, Zach, as the one that they accept, and then you just change your mind, right? Because, I don't know, you just decide it's not the house for you. You walk away during your inspection period, and then they go back to all 14 of those people, and some of them say, oh, I bought another house. Some of them say, oh, what's wrong with it? Why did Zach walk away? Like, I want to get a better deal on this house now. So sellers are worried about losing that leverage that they have in a multiple offer situation by accepting an offer with contingencies that might walk away. On the other two contingencies are all a little bit more in Kara's wheelhouse. The other two big ones are financing, which is essentially your ability to qualify for the loan, and appraisal, which is the home's ability to essentially be worth in the eyes of an independent appraiser what you're paying for it or potentially more. So I'll let Kara talk a little bit about those contingencies.
And the main reason for the contingency is because when you go into contract on a house, you have to put, say, $20,000 earnest money on. And if you walk away otherwise without these contingencies, you're just giving up that $20,000. So it's just to protect your money. So financing, this can be a scary one. It sometimes makes me lose sleep at night, depending on the scenario, but it's very common in this market for financing to be waived. So you want to make sure you have the option to be totally pre-underwritten so that then at the time you get into contract, all you need is a title work and an appraisal. And you can also shorten your closing date. So you're almost as good as cash because you can close in 12 to 14 days. That looks great to the seller because it's less time to have somebody change their mind and just walk away. The appraisal is a big one. So you can waive financing, but you can leave in a piece that says, for instance, I've had a client recently who bought for, we'll just say 1.5. They went up to 1.65. They knew it wasn't going to appraise. And they were like, I don't care. I want this house. I want it day one on the market, so I'm not competing. So that client was prepared in the back of his mind, like, I might be out my down payment plus an extra $150,000. I mean, on smaller loan amounts, this can vary from $20,000 to $30,000, whatever the case may be, but it's a big piece. So you can either waive that 100% and just say, the value is what the value is. I'm willing to pay this much extra, or you can put a placeholder in there and say, I'm willing to pay up to a $10,000 gap, or whatever the case may be. The offers, unfortunately, that I'm seeing accepted most of the time will have no financing and no appraisal contingencies. So they're just kind of rolling the dice, which can be really scary. But at my company, what we do is we have laid out backup plan after backup plan so that if you are waiving for this client in particular, I said, cool, you're putting 20% down. Say it doesn't appraise. Let's reduce it to 10% down. Yes, your rate's going to hike. Are you comfortable with this payment? And he was like, yes, totally fine. That's a good backup plan. I'm not going to lose my earnest money. And we were fine. So just having those conversations, I can't encourage people enough. Like, so many times I'll get an offer and they're like, oh, I just submitted an offer. I'm like, we haven't talked. Like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, can we talk about how you're going to structure your offer? Can we talk about, like, what problems could I see coming up to protect you and your earnest money? And so having that relationship between your agent, your lender, and yourself, and unfortunately for me, I still love it, but it happens a lot on the weekends. So going to, a bank where they're 9 to 5, you're not going to be able to structure your offer and have the confidence because you're not talking through the consequences of what you're waiving. When it comes to inspection, you can do a pre-inspection, so you can waive, the final inspection once you get into contract. There's ways to protect yourselves while waiving these contingencies, just with backup plans and having a knowledgeable team.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and one thing that we're doing more personally, and I'm also seeing more clients that actually, understand the risks of waiving contingencies, is having some sort of cash equivalent backup for if everything goes wrong, and they still want to close on the property, but they just can't get their loan. A good lender should be able to push a lot of loans through, but sometimes it's just not possible within the timeline, and maybe the seller doesn't want to. We've never lost a deal. Kara has closed on a underground home. It was actually like Hobbit-style earth home that everyone thought would never appraise. We got that done. We've gotten a lot of houses in absolutely terrible condition. Once I took a trailer full of appliances to a home that was like a pretty heavy fixer-upper, and it didn't have any appliances, and I put sorry. I installed all of the appliances so that it would appraise. That appraised for $830,000, even though we had it under contract for $645,000. Just all these little actions that you can bet that Bank of America and some part-time agent that is just kind of doing it for the money are never going to take are oftentimes the little nudges that can get that offer accepted because the listing agent has confidence in the team behind you. And then also actually closed, right? Since that's the other thing. It doesn't matter if you waive all your contingencies and you get an offer accepted and then everything falls through and you lose your earnest money, right? The point is to get the house at the end of the day.
And that's all the seller cares about, too. So having them have that confidence in your team and you as a buyer is huge.
So those are kind of the big overarching things that we can change to try and get offers accepted. I won't talk on competency too long, right? Because there's enough agents presenting about how if you want to be successful in real estate, you just need to pick the right agent, and the right agent is, of course, whoever's presenting at the time, right? But it is really important that you at least do some basic due diligence, right? The reality is that things may change, but for the most part, all agents are making the same amount of money. Whether they're pros that have years of experience, they're making their 2.5% to 3% commission, or whether they're like completely clueless and just kind of winging it, they're making the same amount of money. So there aren't a lot of industries where you can dine at McDonald's or the French Laundry and pay the same tab. Real estate is one of those industries. So if you have the choice, like pick French Laundry, right? Like find the right, maybe people haven't been there. It's in California where I grew up. Find the right agent and know that the fact that commissions, right, are negotiable, but generally follow a pattern means that you're not, paying a ton extra for that expertise like you would in a lot of other industries, which is pretty cool. On the listing side, I've definitely run into situations where a buyer was extremely well qualified and should have got their offer accepted, but because of the agent's attitude, poor communication, or just mistakes, they didn't. You always want to make sure that your agent both is like competent generally and then also is competent in the niche that you're looking to purchase in. For instance, I sell land occasionally and development opportunities. I sold a parcel of land in Kenmore that we had subdivided. And if you're in real estate, you know that there are actually different offer forms that you use for land versus a condo versus a multifamily home versus a single family home. And I got 6 offers on this parcel of land, and 2 of them were like super similar, like really, really similar. And both clients did not want to change their offer. They were both happy. That was the most they were willing to pay. So I had to make a decision between these 2 very similar offers, but one of them was written on the correct land offer forms, and one of them was written as if it was a single family home. And like I could have got the other agent on the phone and I could have explained to them how land purchases work, and I could have told her to rewrite the offer on the correct form, and I could have like reminded her about the differences in timeline for a land purchase. But I had 2 really similar offers. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to accept the offer that's written right the first time and work with the agent that I know is competent in this type of transaction to close it. The other agent was actually really disappointed because she found out that they had the same price, and I told her, like, if you had written it correctly, it might have been you, right? So don't end up in that situation as a client. Make sure the person that's representing you is going to do a good job with it.
I think that's all I have too. What questions do we have? Anyone? Is anyone currently actively making offers in this market?
Always.
Couple. You just closed.
Yeah, so I had to do all of the things that they just talked about, and the one thing that really helped me was being pre-underwritten prior to submitting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all of it was super stressful. The whole thing was super stressful, but at least I had confidence that I was going to be able to. I mean, knock on wood, get the financing.
Well, and that's the thing too, is buying a home can be emotionally stressful. It can be mentally stressful, physically stressful, because you're like, oh, I have 100,000 or however much on the line. So having the confidence in your team just helps everyone sleep better at night. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so when you're waiving financing, can you talk about, like, okay, so what could go wrong when you waive that?
So many things. I'm a pretty high stress person. Okay, so.
Let's talk about all your nightmares, Clara.
Well, I stare at the ceiling at 3 a.m. like every 4 nights. No. Luckily, I've been doing this long enough. I actually tell everyone I got my graduate degree at Quicken Loans because I worked there for 8 years. And I used to do like 40 to 50 loans a month, which is high volume. So I got a lot of reps and then I got a lot of practice. I saw some mistakes, but like now I can look 2 steps ahead and be like, the underwriter is going to ask about this. This doesn't line up. So I try and just, out of my own experience, plan for the worst and always set that backup plan. So if you're waiving financing with me, it's like you're golden. But the things that can go wrong is you could lose your job. You could have money at a credit union that's in Florida and you can't wire you can't go and get a wire same day, or you have to deposit money from an investment account to the Florida account. And now you have to get it here, like just moving money around. You could have a gift fund. Like a lot of people around here rely on gift funds. The parent could say, nope, just kidding. I lost my money at the casino last week. Anything could happen. Appraisal is a big one. Condos are super risky, not super, but that is one thing that's out of my control because we have to go to the condo board and get a certain list of a questionnaire filled out, and they have to meet certain guidelines to get approved. They also have to have they can't have an insurance deductible of more than 5%. And that's a newer thing. And so that's been coming up recently. So I always say on condos, if you're waiving, keep the condo approval as part of your offer. I think that's about all that keeps me up at night.
If you're waiving financing, but not waiving the appraisal, and you have like an unconforming ADU, how does that work?
So say, for instance, unpermitted ADUs are allowed in Seattle because it's fairly common, and they just have to have another comp to support that. Same with unique properties and so forth. Log homes, for instance, they're totally fine. You just need one additional comp. But let's say you walked into a house and it had a stairway and there was no railing. And so that's not up to code. It's a safety and hazardous issue. So then that appraisal is marked subject to, and we cannot close on it until the railing is put up. That then makes the property unfinanceable. So that wouldn't necessarily fall under value, but that could hit on your financing contingency.
So you can still get out because of the appraisal, but not.
Technically not, because you're saying value. And if the value's there, then you have to have somebody like Michael just throw up a railing and move on. And as an agent, and that's the whole thing that comes back down to the agent you work with. I mean, so many times I'll have appraisals go out to a house and a water tank isn't double strapped, which is required.
I've done that.
Yeah. Yes, but that will make an appraisal report subject to, and then you have to pay an extra $250 to have the appraiser go back out and verify it's double strapped. So just having the agent team be able to walk through the property and be like, I mean, Dennis on this team sends me properties all the time, and he's like, do you think this will pass? And I'm like, I'm not seeing every picture, but from what I can see, but it's ultimately the appraiser's discretion.
The things that I see come up most frequently are missing flooring, like if they've ripped up all the flooring and it's just plywood, that oftentimes I see called out in the appraisal. Any questionable, like if the roof seems like it could be leaky or is just covered in moss and very old, I see that called out in the appraisal pretty frequently. Railings are huge. Foundation problems aren't that common, but when I do see them called out, it can be really difficult to get them removed. I had a renovation loan in the central district of Seattle that had a foundation problem called out, and we ended up, cutting holes in the floor, bringing structural engineers down into those holes, having them take a bunch of pictures and qualify the foundation. letting them back up out of those holes on the condition that they write a favorable structural engineering report about the home. Like, tongue-in-cheek aside, we're recording this, but tongue-in-cheek aside, like, a lot of times when those things come up, you just need to figure out a way to get these things through. And the reason that they throw up appraisal problems, right, are often because the home needs to be habitable by the lender's definition for you to close on the home. So it can be frustrating as an investor who's planning on doing a rather large-scale renovation and making the home absolutely gorgeous and very much habitable, not to be able to get your loan because the roof that you're planning on replacing anyway after closing is old, right? So the tongue-in-cheek part, right, is that there's no part of this is trying to like pull the wool over a lender or appraiser's eyes. It's just trying to figure out what the rules are and have an experienced enough team that they know the rules so that they can check all the boxes that they need to check so that you can move on with the part of your project that actually adds value, which is the purchase and the renovation and the long-term hold. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on those, like, you know, love letters that you're supposed to sometimes send to the sellers to get, where you think to get the house accepted that way?
Ooh, yeah, that's a super hot button issue. I will send love letters if a buyer wants to, but I try not to. The reality is that there's a lot of fair housing laws around not discriminating in the sale of real estate. And those love letters, especially the love letters that have pictures attached to them of people whose ethnicities, one of the things that you can't discriminate based on, are like right there front and center, are just essentially an opportunity for a seller who is discriminatory to discriminate, right? So I think at some point our market will actually outlaw them. That point is not today. So they are still written, and oftentimes sellers will really want to see them. I actually almost did not get a house once that I was the best offer because I chose not to write a love letter, and the agent told me that, and I told the agent why I wasn't writing one, right? So unfortunately, it's part of the game right now. So a lot of people are encouraging you to write them, but unfortunately, hopefully it's taken out of the game at some point by some kind of legislative action, because it is just another opportunity for unfairness to happen in real estate, which has a history of unfairness that is slowly being righted right over the years. Yeah.
So cash is one thing that's very concrete. If I offer you more cash, you're obviously going to be more obligated to look towards that. But for contingencies, can you talk about examples in which you can lever that to have your offer stand out a little more?
Yeah.
Okay, to be clear, cash doesn't always win. Like, I've won several offers that we weren't the highest price and that they weren't putting the most down. So don't be afraid of, because all it takes is me as the lender calling the listing agent being like, would you put 10% more down on the house, or would you put it in the savings account and do work on the house after? And they're like, oh no, that makes perfect sense. Like, I get, and then I followed up and say, if it doesn't appraise, they have X amount of money to go towards all they care about is, are you going to close on the house? So realistically, they don't care about loan to value or VA financing or anything, as long as it's properly explained. But purchase price can have obviously a difference because the seller wants to walk away with the most amount of money. But if I went to Michael and was like, hey Michael, your house is $800,000, I'll offer you $1 million, but I need 45 days to close. I'm getting contingent funds. It has to appraise, and I'm doing an inspection. Or I say, hey Michael, here's $950, 14-day close, waive financing. I have $50,000 extra in appraisal. Which one do you, I mean, they want the for sure deal, because them not taking that extra $50,000 is gonna give them the risk of that deal falling out on day 39, them having to go back to market, who knows what the market is, and having to maybe restage, rephotograph, and cost them all extra money. So I think contingencies is the power play all day long. Time to close, communication, and it all comes down to confidence. And if you have two people at $1 million offer and they have complete confidence in both offer, they're going to say, hey, can you come up 10,000? You know, so it's more about confidence than purchase price or down payment or cash.
Yeah, and if you do get yourself into hot water where your contingencies are waived and something happens, right, there are options through private money loans. There's companies like Flynn Family Lending that loan on all kinds of different properties. Israel Lopez at Certain Lending was here at the last happy hour talking about contractors. He's a hard money lender. That's another option to just close a deal that just won't close conventionally. So having only on investment, you can't move into a house that you're getting a hard money loan on. So some of those options can be really valuable to have in your back pocket. To Kara's point around like the kind of process that you're going through, gosh, lost my train of thought there for a second. Backup plan, contingencies. The offers that you're writing, if you're waiving your contingencies, a lot of it is just a signal to the seller that you're committed to close. And a lot of times when you're the buyer, you're thinking like, what does the seller want? What does the seller want? What does the seller want? But us on the inside, like we know how much sway a lot of good agents have with their clients. So we're asking what the listing agent wants just as much as what the seller wants. And what the listing agent wants, if they're successful and they're high volume, is to have a review at the end of this transaction that says my listing agent was amazing. I'm recommending that all my friends and family, they got me a great price on the home and we closed. And to get this one off the books, closed, so they can service the 12 other sellers that are in their pipeline because they do good at what they do. So they have a very active business. So when we're talking about what the seller wants in Kara's situation, right? Michael may be a retiree that has all the time in the world and is just moving into a condo that I already own in cash, and I can wait 45 days. So maybe that offer is actually compelling. Or I might have medical bills to pay and they're already overdue, or I might have a foreclosure, or I might want to buy my next home in Kansas City and I want to close on that in 14 days and I need the money right now. So knowing what the seller wants is really important so that you can craft an offer that caters to that. And then knowing what the listing agent wants, which usually is certainty, since they only get paid if this thing closes, and catering to that is super important as well.
So I got into trouble a little bit because I had a 3-week closing timeline, and a week in we got nervous about the loan, and so I wanted to go back up to private money. But because I hadn't been pursuing private money from the start of the 3-week time period, I didn't have time to get the hard money. So I just wanted to caution people, if you want to use the backup, I don't know how you guys feel about the timeline, but it kind of felt like I needed to be talking to I had been talking to conventional lenders for months, Kara included, but I hadn't, like, the hard money guys didn't have my file in front of them. They didn't know me, they didn't know the property, they didn't know my financials.
That's part of being the prepared part. Like if I'm talking to a client and they're like, this property has this weird like thing in the roof, do you think it will pass? And I'm like, and they're buying it as an investment property. I say, before you make an offer, we can go with me, but talk to a hard money lender, have it all lined up so you're approved with both and can make the switch. Because terms on conventional are way better and it will save you a lot more money, but you have that in your back pocket. Before, like, being prepared is the best thing you can do in this market.
Okay, so let's say, I think the appraisal is a big part right now, more than like you said, with an inspection, you get pre-inspection and we're good. For financing, as long as you're not gonna lose your job in 3 weeks, and the appraisal, but the appraisal, like, we're still using comps from like October, some appraisers are. So like, yes, if you have like a hard, like a good enough 22AD, but if you don't or you waive that, do you still like recommend, okay, having that hard money, and then maybe again, like at the rate that the market's moving, then knowing that in a couple months you can then refinance into the conventional?
So again, hard money is hard because it's only if you will never occupy the property as your primary residence. You can't like even give any hint that it will ever be a primary. But I would never tell a client to waive appraisal if they weren't prepared to pay that out of pocket. So we shouldn't be getting in these appraisal issues because I'm gonna be doomsday and be like, okay, what happens in this scenario? And we'll chat through it, and then and that's why there can be a cap too, because they're like, well, I can afford 40,000 extra, but not 100. I'm like, cool, right, 40. Like, let's talk about the backup plan after back. That's why it's so important, before anyone submits an offer, talk to your lender and figure out A, B, and C options.
Yeah, and a good agent will be able to pull comps and tell you what the worst case scenario is. Oh, if they pulled these comps, you're fine. If they use this comp from October, it was kind of a weird sale. I don't think they marketed it very well. It's a lot lower than I expected it to be. If they pull this comp, there's a risk of a low appraisal. So some of that is having an agent that understands the market and is actually pulling comps. Another thing to keep in mind on the appraisal front is that if your agent is good and if your agent is good at negotiating, and then also if you're an investor, right, and you're not buying the home at whatever price because you love it and it has to be this home no matter what it sells for, the chances of a low appraisal are actually relatively low. I've done over 150 transactions in the last 4 years. I've had 2 low appraisals. The total low appraisal value was $32,000. I've had 60 high appraisals. I didn't count the money, but it's probably like $3 million of high appraisal that I've had. My biggest high appraisal was $750 all in, $1.2 million value. Boom, like immediately. So if you're playing the game and if you're working with an investor-focused agent, if they're sourcing deals off market, if they're negotiating with sellers, if they're not just jumping on the bandwagon of these new listings that have offer review dates, some of my best deals have come from things that I actually figure out when the listing expires. I know the listing agent has to sell it within the next 3 days, otherwise they don't get paid at all. And I come in 120,000 under asking, and maybe I get it for 90,000 under asking. Right, playing that game means that even though low appraisal is always a risk, it becomes much less of a risk because you've got someone who knows what they're doing on your side.
Also, not that I ever advise this, and I think it's maybe happened to me one time, but you do also have the opportunity, one option, and people think it will work, it never works, is you can ask the appraiser to rethink their value. And nobody likes to be told that they're not good at their job, so they're usually like, nope, I stand by my value, move on, and that just wastes time. But you can jump lenders in that case. We've done a lot of Save Me deals where maybe, for instance, the reason I joined my company, my previous company, what was the final straw, it was like a $1.5 million loan amount. My previous company required 2 appraisals. One came in at value, the next appraisal came in $500,000 light. So I was being recruited at this company I'm at now, and I was like, hey, Lisa, take this loan. Here's the total file. Like, it's clear to close minus appraisal. She got 1 appraisal and it was done. So absolute worst case scenario, you can always pivot and try and get another appraisal. And then if 2 people are telling you like, hey, you're paying way too much over ask, maybe you don't want to buy that property.
What are your thoughts on bringing your own comps to the appraisal? Like, we've done it a few times, and I would say most of the time the appraiser's okay, but every once in a while they are like, don't give me this. This is, I don't know.
Again, it's like, it depends on the personality, because some people are like, don't tell me how to do my job. But when appraisals have been hard, they have reached out to the agent and be like, hey, can you help me with comps? Like, one of the houses I just sold was all the bedrooms were below grade, so it was considered a 0-bedroom home. And they're like, how do I comp this? And so he called the agent, and the agent was like, here. And he was like, awesome, thank you for your help. So it depends on the appraiser. And unfortunately, that's so beyond our control. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't happen as much now because DADUs and the condoization process for DADUs are more common, but some of my first detached ADU listings, I did have appraisers call me, and they were like, so is this a condo or is this a single family home? And I'm like, oh, it's a single family home, right? Because the values are higher on a single family home. Like, clearly it's a single family home. There's no shared walls, it's a single family home. So it is really like, I think in those weird deals where it would add a lot of value, I think on a pretty straightforward, like, 4-bed, 2-bath home that's got a bunch of comps, like, it probably doesn't hurt you, but it may not be worth the effort. I personally do not do that, and haven't really had too many appraisal troubles, so I don't think it's necessary.
I feel like we're like 50-50 on it in that experience.
I just had a condo, the appraisal came back yesterday, and they went, I want to say $60,000 over ask. And everyone was kind of sweating. The clients knew exactly what they were willing to pay, however much. They even liquidated their investment account because they're like, it's not going to appraise. The appraiser's remarks were, this market is bonkers. There were 3 other offers supporting this value. None of the comps even came in at the value of the condo, but because of his commentary and being able to like justify this market, it came in, I think, $15,000 under ask, and the clients were thrilled. So, I mean, appraisers they're good at their jobs. They know like market plays into it, comps play into it, and so forth. Any other questions? Yes.
My agent did meet the appraiser and give him comps, and I don't think that necessarily the sales price made a difference, but he also gave him rental comps. And we were using 75% of rents to
Oh.
bolster our
Yeah.
income. And so the rental numbers in the appraisal are awesome. I don't think they're realistic, but they're awesome, and I think they helped our loan. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but you have to be really careful, right?
Yeah.
Michael, why do you not talk to the appraiser as a?
If I had frequent low appraisals, I probably would, but
not an
the
issue.
reality is I've only had 2 in the last 150 deals, so I just, not that I don't think it would be effective, and that if I thought it was going to come in low, I would do it. I just haven't walked myself into a situation where I don't see comps to justify the price that my client is offering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Well, me and Kara are going to be around for the rest of the night. We do have this space, which is where we work. We have this space until tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. when everyone shows up to work. We have this space until about 9:30, so feel free to hang out, enjoy the rest of the pizza, the drinks. Feel free to talk to Kara about loans, me or anyone else on the team about real estate, David Weiser if he's still around about DADUs, and appreciate all y'all coming. The bathroom passes for the bathroom are right by the check-in if you have to use the restroom. We do also have a validation machine right at the same area for your parking tickets so that you don't have to pay for parking. Make sure to just slide it in there before you head out. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate seeing all of you.